So now over on the Streamlit side of things, things are a little bit more interesting. So if we run make frontend, and then open up a web page with that to run it. So we get a couple warnings right here about use container width being removed from the new Streamlit API. So let's go ahead and do that now. Doing a search, we have two instances of use container width. One is true and one is false. And they each have their different recommendations according to the error message. So let's go with the true case first. If use container width is true, then we simply don't use that attribute anymore, just use width equals stretch. We'll go ahead and replace that. And then if use container width is false, they want us to set it to width equals false. So we'll replace that as well. And then going ahead and starting the server and opening up a web page again, there are no errors. Now for the interesting part. So I haven't done a multi-page application on Streamlit except for when I was actually doing the script just before this. So this is something that I have less experience with. So I have a prompt on my clipboard right now. Again, I will include that in the description of the video, but basically I'm saying that I have this all on the back end already, and I just need a new page in Streamlit to get the data. And then I have it on the planner agent, and I will add some context. So I'll add routes.py, which comes from the back end, and then I will add main.py from the front end, and then also let's do plot.py from the front end as well and see what it comes up with. This is already a little bit interesting. So they are actually recommended to do st.nagivation with st.page, which is exactly what I would do as well. But when I first made the script for this, it actually recommended a different approach, which I'll pull up here. So it recommended, this is kind of like the easiest way of doing it. Streamlit will automatically recognize just if you have a pages folder in the same folder, and then all the pages have to actually begin with a number, and that denotes the order that they appear. And I just didn't like that. I thought it was kind of a messy way of doing things. So that's why I looked into st.nagivation. That said, like the old way of doing the multi-page app is it's nice because it's a much faster way to get up and running. You don't really need to think about all this structure, which is good because Streamlit it's designed as a prototyping tool that you can use. Now, if you want something a little more professional with a little bit more control, this has been available in Streamlit since about 1.2 something or other in there. st.nagivation. So this basically, if you're familiar with like Angular or React, you have what's called the router. So st.nagivation basically turns your main file that you run with Streamlit Run into a router, which contains all the actual pages that you're looking for through the use of st.page. So that's what we'll be looking to use for a little bit more control. So looking at the rest of the plan, it's going to create a profile page, which is going to fetch the ID from the backend and then actually have a method to render everything. The main.app, it is, as I was just saying, it's going to turn your entry point file into a router. So it's going to basically just refactor that a whole bunch and just have it so it has like the dashboard and the athlete profile. Then it'll run everything. I read the rest of this plan, and the one thing that confuses me is it has this function here for navigate to profile, which I understand it. It's setting the query params, but we already kind of have something else to do that with st.query params. I'm prompting it for a little bit more of its reasoning behind that. I'm saying, why aren't we using st.query params.update? Because we've already done that in main.py here. Okay, I see now. So I prompted it further. What it was doing was it was looking at the top athletes that we have here, which is it's an HTML component in its current form, so that's why it was inserting JavaScript into there. So I told it to just not focus on that for now. So I'm okay with the rest of this, so let's go ahead and move on to the testing stuff. So this is what I was talking about before. It ended up creating 12 tests instead of only the 2 tests that I ended up wanting, and this file was about 400 lines long. So I had to dial it back a bit, and I said, please double check your agent file. Say please because I'm concerned about the Terminator outcome, apparently. So I had to double check and said, oh, you're absolutely right. It took out about half the lines from it. So now it's asking to run it again. And it's failing as expected. Looking at the actual tests that were made, it has one for, I don't like the name that it has here. I'm gonna just success. That's all it needs. Doesn't need this verbose name. Okay, so it's mocking the API call. So then we're fetching it. We're testing the return value gets that. We're testing that we can render the page without getting errors. And then it has, once again, I'm going to rename this. I don't like these naming schemes that it uses. It's mocking the query parameters. Okay, it's kind of interesting. The athlete not found, the invalid query parameters, missing optional fields is handled correctly. Okay, I'd say that's fine right now. We'll see more during the implementation step, so let's go ahead and move on to that. Looking at what it made, it's doing the fetch athlete, which we knew was going to happen. This is the new profile.py file that's created in the source directory. It said that it was going to put out the fetch athlete function. So it did that. It's calling out to our fastapi endpoint that we made, and it's returning the JSON. That's really all that we need that to do. In the actual rendering function here, so it's getting the athlete ID from the query params, and if we don't have that, then it's saying back to dashboard. This seems to be like, if there's an error, then it'll just have this back to dashboard. We can probably just make a function so that we're not duplicating that. Let's look at the rest first. So, okay, so we're fetching the dashboard back to, has this back to dashboard error again. So, okay, so then we have the columns. So we have a previous, a dashboard, and a next. So the previous athlete is supposed to, I think we are going to run into errors because we have like a non-contiguous set. So just doing athlete ID -1, I don't think is going to work. We'll see how that ends up working. Okay, it's setting the title, that's fine. Then it looks like it's giving all the attributes. Strength lifts, yada yada. And additional data. What's additional data. Oh, just if it has this extra stuff, if it's defined, I guess. So that's fine to keep for now, I think. So I had to reprompt it a couple more times. When I arrived at main.py, it was just atrocious at first. I'm gonna write a strongly worded letter to Sam Altman, or I guess Anthropic, because I'm using Claude, but it just it didn't use st.nagivation, even though it definitely said in the plan that it was going to, which is really strange. So I had to get it to rewrite that. So main.py it's reduced to just this, which is what we expect. That's kind of just the router of the whole program. And then dashboard is what previously was main.py, and then we have our profile page, which we already saw earlier. So I think that this is okay code-wise. Okay, so I pulled up the application and noticed nothing was showing, and then looked in the code, and it's purposefully hiding stuff because it thinks that since we dealt with the query printers, we didn't want this navigation at all, which is not true. I definitely did want the navigation for it, which I want this to appear at the top. Let me just remove that comment. I don't know why it thought that. That's a very opinionated thing to do. So now we do have the multiple pages. When you go to profile page, render profile page. I don't like that name either. It doesn't have an athlete automatically, so yeah, back to dashboard doesn't work either. That's what I was kind of thinking with the rerun thing, so there are definitely some things to edit here. So what I ended up doing, I ended up copying the profile page from the script that was made before, because this was just, there were too many unexpected things that I got this time for some reason, which just goes to show you, like, AI, you can have the exact same prompts and still get incredibly different results, which is tough sometimes. So this is kind of sort of doing the same idea. So what we're doing, this is a bit of an enhancement. So it's loading all of the athlete data that we have, and the reason it's doing that is because then it can keep track of all of the athlete IDs that we have, so that'll solve that non-contiguous problem that I was referring to earlier, where I was saying you can't just do athlete ID -1 or +1. This will instead have a listing of all the athletes, so you just go to the next one in the list instead. We are still getting something from a URL parameter. What's different here is it's actually putting the athlete index in the session state as well, which just helps the application save what's going on, so it can more easily find things. We do still have a previous button and a next button. This is pretty much the big part of what changed here. Another thing that I do want to point out, and again, all this code is going to be on my GitHub too, so you can download it from there, is at the bottom I have if name equals main, then main, which the reason why that's important is if you look at main.py here, I'm only importing Streamlit here, and then this will actually be easier if I just accept everything so that we can see just the code. So then we're just defining pages for each of these, and we're giving the actual path to the page. And then so what Streamlit is going to do is it's going to look for for these values down here, the if name equals main. I forget what this kind of thing is called. So that's how it's working for both dashboard and profile. The other thing that I do want to point out then is on plot.py. Well, two things actually. I guess first, we're making an actual load athlete function. So that'll go to the specific endpoint that we just built on fastapi to get the athlete data. And secondly, when we're loading data, I want to make sure that we cache this right now, because if we don't, then on profile.py, where it calls load data, it's going to have to do that every time the page loads, and that ends up being a lot of data. So if you're pressing the next button and the previous button a lot, then you're going to want something that is kind of already in memory for that. This video is starting to get long, thanks in large part to the AI trouble. And there is more that I want to do with the code, but before I leave you, I just want to show you what this looks like. So we have our dashboard, and we have the athlete profile. Again, I put position equals top. I think by default position it's right on the sidebar, so this just makes it, I like this better, makes it more visible. And we have scores for this athlete, and we have the next and the previous button. So I know that this has been a long haul, and there's still one video left to get the code right, but yeah, this is about everything that we do need. This is already looking pretty cool. Let's go to one that actually has data. And then say it's pretty cool. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.